All right, let's dive into one of philosophy's biggest and most brilliant head-scratchers, Plato's dialogue, the Parmenides.
So, picture this. A genius comes up with his masterpiece idea, the one he's famous for, and then he writes a whole book explaining why it might be totally wrong. Why would Plato, the guy who created the famous theory of ideas, spend his time writing a takedown of that very theory? What on earth is going on here? But here's the thing, it's not self-sabotage. It's actually something way more impressive. Think of it as an intellectual stress test. This is Plato being incredibly honest and brave, pushing his own concept to its absolute breaking point to see if it holds up. It's a masterclass in how to think critically, especially about your own best ideas. Okay, so the dialogue itself sets up this epic philosophical showdown in ancient Athens. You've got the heavyweight champion of philosophy, Parmenides, and his star student Zeno. And stepping into the ring with them is a super young but already razor-sharp Socrates. You can just feel the intellectual energy in the air. Now, the big debate back then, really kicked off by Parmenides, was this problem of the one and the many. Is reality at its core just one single unchanging thing, the one, or is it the world we actually see, filled with many different constantly changing things? Parmenides made this radical claim that true reality is the one, and our entire world of separate objects is basically an illusion. So Zeno's job was to defend his teacher. He came up with these mind-bending paradoxes to prove that our everyday, common-sense view of the world just doesn't work logically. He argued it leads to absurdities, like saying something can be both similar and dissimilar at the same time, which, sounds impossible. And right into the middle of this philosophical brawl steps young Socrates. But he's not there to pick a side. Nope, he thinks he has a solution, a brilliant proposal that can fix this whole problem once and for all. And this is where we get Plato's legendary theory of forms, presented through Socrates. The idea is that this physical world we live in isn't the real world. Nope. The real reality exists in a higher realm of perfect, eternal blueprints, these forms, or ideas. So how does this fix the one and many problem? Well, think about chairs. You've seen tons of different chairs, right? None of them are perfect, but we recognize them all as chairs because they all, as Socrates says, participate in the one perfect form of the chair. See? This lets things be both many, all the different physical chairs, and one by being connected to that single ideal form. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Not so fast. Instead of getting a round of applause, the old master, Parmenides, who is really a stand-in for Plato's own mature, critical mind, steps up and just begins to systematically dismantle this beautiful theory, piece by painstaking piece. He goes right for the weak spot, that little word participation. It sounds good, it's a nice metaphor, but what does it actually mean? How, logically, does a physical thing participate in a perfect non-physical form? And this is where the theory really starts to wobble. Parmenides lays out this perfect trap. He asks, does each chair get the whole form of chairness? Because if it does, that single form has to somehow be in a million different places at once. Or does each chair just get a little piece of the form? Well, if that's the case, then the perfect whole indivisible form isn't whole anymore. It's a classic catch-22, and there is no easy way out. And then he delivers the knockout blow. It's an argument so famous it has its own name, the third man argument. And let me tell you, this is one of the most devastating critiques in the entire history of philosophy. It all starts simply enough. Parmenides says, okay, let's say you have a bunch of great things. To explain what they all have in common, their greatness, you say there has to be a perfect form of greatness. Makes sense. But wait, now you've created a new group to think about. All those original great things, plus the form of greatness itself. Since they all share the quality of greatness, what unites them? Logically, you need another, higher-level form of greatness to explain it. And you can probably see where this is headed. You'd need a third form to explain the second, a fourth to explain the third, and on, forever. It's an infinite regress. The theory that was supposed to give us a single unifying idea for many things ends up creating an infinity of new ideas. The whole thing just shatters. Parmenides' final big critique is just as damaging. He says, okay, even if these forms exist, if they're in some perfect, separate reality, and we're stuck down here in our flawed physical one, how on earth could we ever know anything about them? It creates this massive unbridgeable gap between us and the truth. So, this brings us back to the big question. If Plato himself, speaking through Parmenides, saw all these fatal flaws, why did he create the theory in the first place? What's the point of this whole dialogue if it just tears down his central idea? And here is the brilliant twist. The Parmenides isn't a rejection of the theory of forms. It's a sophisticated evolution of it. Plato is showing us that true philosophy isn't about having final, perfect answers. It's about the process of relentless self-questioning, a method called dialectic. By showing the flaws in his own early theory, he was actually paving the way for a much stronger philosophy, one that would directly inspire his greatest student, Aristotle. And this is the ultimate takeaway. Even after all these devastating critiques, Parmenides warns Socrates that you can't just abandon the idea of universal forms. To do so, he says, would be the destruction of the mind, making reasoned thought impossible. We have to believe in abstract universal concepts to make sense of the world. The real challenge is to understand them correctly. And this leaves us with a really powerful question for our own lives. What are the fundamental ideas we rely on every single day without a second thought? Concepts like justice, truth, human rights, or progress. How often do we stop to rigorously question their foundations, the way Plato so bravely did with his own greatest idea? This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.